The community.
I was like, should I like be browsing the internet in case
Clowning
there's
on
like
anime
spoilers
game.
for something?
No.
Oh, are you beating me in the fantasy league yet? No, I'm like couple points behind you. Okay. Good.
Is there another page?
We're gonna start in like 3-4 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, small panel turnout.
I think it probably doesn't help that a lot of people are still trying to.
Get their badges and stuff.
Oh, like Stefan is here.
Oh, cool.
Bottleneck this morning,
Oh,
so
cool.
we're trying to push it back as far as we can.
The sun is my favorite movie. A fable in the game that you talk to like a character during one of the festivals, and then he was like whenever he was in the beta group thing, a beta backer. So he's like, oh my gosh, this story made me cry, and then when the game released, he asked me, like DM me asking if he could have like the story, want to take it to his therapist to talk to them about it. And then later, he writes back saying like thanking me for it and how helpful it had been to like be able to use that.
That's awesome. That's like specifically about your writing too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yay.
That's so freaking cool. That was the
I think
coolest.
Stefan and
Nothing,
Tim are
nothing,
here.
I mean, has been better than that yet. There's
Tempted
lots
to
of
run
cool
out.
things, but that was like the coolest.
Yeah,
Panelists.
that's
Come
super nice.
Oh, right. Is he waiting in line?
I don't know.
No, hope not.
Oh,
Yeah.
he can sneak out the panel.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, we have an extra mic.
It does say TBD. It could that
could
could
be-
be me
it
or
could be
Stefan.
both of you.
Yeah.
Two.
Two.
Determined.
TWO.
To be determined.
Panel.
Sorry.
He told Austin no.
I think he wasn't sure if he was going to come.
Dirty birds. You're sticking around for that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's
At
from
least
5 to
the first
10.
few hours of it.
Okay.
6
Oh.
to 10.
6 to 10. Yeah, cool.
Oh, wow. That is late.
1:15 will be our official start.
Okay.
Very sorry on the delay.
No, sure.
It's okay. Trying to get us a new panelist.
Come on.
Just go to the front, say you're a panelist.
It's going to make it easier for me as the sus one if there's more.
The sus one.
Right, right,
There's more
exactly.
people.
Oh, yeah,
It's not
because
gonna
Stefan's
blend
never
in.
been on. He's
Yeah.
never
Wait.
been on IGDA.
He has. Yeah.
Has he?
Yeah, during the pandemic.
Who hasn't been on IGDA?
Me.
Oh.
Actually, you're right. The audience will have to pick out who
That's
sus.
right. Yeah, exactly.
They'll have to vote us off.
Well, now you have a contender between you and Alex.
I have a shirt.
Who's not even on the list.
It's true.
I've also got a shirt. With the you like free flavored water, as in like they get a big tub of water and they throw some like fruits in.
Right, yeah,
You
Microsoft
get
does that
coffee
too.
though, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they do have
Free
baristas.
coffee.
Okay, I guess those type of drinks.
Yeah.
I was
Microsoft
thinking
has a.
alcoholic
beverage.
drinks.
Oh yeah, no, it's like fizzy water and stuff.
Oh, okay,
Microsoft
yeah,
has
no,
a
we get
special
drinks,
deal.
okay.
They have a special deal with
Oh,
Talking
except-
Rain.
In San Diego, they have the local like IPAs on tap. in
Oh,
the
that's cool.
office.
That's cool.
Oh, there is the Google office.
And thank you for coming to TGEX 2024. I know this is our, this is our first panel of the day, and so I'm expecting it to be a really fun weekend. It's really good to get this kicked off. We're really happy to have you all here, and if you're watching from home right now, we're happy to have you here as well. And I'm really excited to hear from our very talented guests today. My name is Chris, and I have the pleasure of being the moderator for our IGDA panel today. And without further ado, I will allow everyone else to introduce themselves.
Hello. Hi, I'm Paige Carter. I am a character artist at Bungie and was also a recent college professor at Mesa College.
I'm Karen Morrison. I am on the board of IGDA San Diego, and I do narrative design for Sodaden. It's a indie studio developing Roots of Pacha.
Cool. Hi everyone, I'm Alex Hawker. I'm a software engineer on the Game Snacks team at Google.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Ferbrache. I'm a senior gameplay engineer on Forza Motorsport inside of Xbox Game Studios, and I founded the Video Game Development Club at UCSD in 2011.
It's very awesome to hear. So I think it's really awesome that we have so many people of different backgrounds at this panel today. So I think I really want to jump into that with our questions. And so what led you all on your path to the games industry? And would you say that your route was conventional in any way, or do you feel like you took a certain pathway that acted as your door into the industry?
Yeah, we'll do reverse. So yeah, I don't know. I just always really liked games. My first game was Duck Hunt. I played it in a hospital that I was having I was in a hospital having surgery, and they had a video game room, which was really unusual at the time. And so I played Duck Hunt, fell in love with video games, and then so much so that my dad called Nintendo of America when I was 12 and asked if they'd take 12-year-olds as employees, and they told him no. So that was a bit of a bummer, but I was like, I'm gonna make video games. So I would say my path was not really typical. I came to UCSD. I started the game club because there was no community at the time for people who were interested in making video games, and I wanted to make friends, so I was like, let's just do this. And through the club, I got connections with like local indies at the time, and that connection led to a job opportunity. I worked as an indie for like 2.5 years, which, I mean, maybe we'll get to later, but I wouldn't recommend doing that out of college. But that experience was helpful to me because it did sort of parlay into a role at Microsoft inside of Xbox.
Yeah, so for me, in a similar fashion to Alex, I was definitely into games from a young age. When I was like yay tall, I was playing like Putt-Putt and Pajama Sam and all those other fun games, and Pac-Man, you know, good stuff. So I always wanted to kind of build my own games, my own takes on ideas, and kind of, you know, give back to the gaming community, sort of. That said, my route was maybe not quite as, you know, regular as I would have liked it to be, in that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do gameplay programming and game making, and then suddenly I was at Google and I'm like, oh, this is like more corporate tech stuff than I was planning to do. But thankfully I found that there was some like gaming initiatives within Google, and I joined one of them, Game Snacks, not called that at the time, but it's become Game Snacks, which is about like web gaming, and so I've really kind of enjoyed where I am, even if it was a bit of a windy road to get here.
I would say that my path is typical because there is no typical path. I went to school for visual arts and media. I graduated from here. And I did photography and graphic design, and I always thought that I couldn't be a writer because I am fairly dyslexic, but there's this thing called spell check, and it's fabulous. And so eventually I found my way into gaming, and my approach was I will do anything, and I got a job in marketing, and then I found my way to, I went entirely the indie route, but I actually really love it, so it is a little bit intense and kind of scary, but its own cool, fun startup but I actually, it's sort of like an internal startup, and if you like that, then great, you might like this, but it is a little bit intense, but fun, and kind of scary, but and its own, for me, it was like, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't have people like encouraging me, like, oh, you really like games, maybe you should give it a try and write anyway. And eventually I was just like, I'm gonna write. I don't care if it's bad. And then eventually, if you do something badly enough, you get better at it. Yeah, and so, yeah, for me, it was like, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't have people encouraging me, like, oh, you really like games, maybe you should give it a try and write anyway. And eventually I was just like, I'm gonna write. I don't care if it's bad. And then eventually, if you do something badly enough, you get better at it.
I knew like pretty young that I wanted to kind of follow in his footsteps. He was an animator for games like Borderlands and Unreal, and dad was a game developer for 25 years. Saints Row, and so I wanted to be an animator like my dad. So I went to Ringling College for computer animation, which at the time was one of the best programs. Got about 2 years into it and was like, oh no, animation sucks. It was really hard. But thankfully, we had to learn the entire process. It was more geared towards like short films to work at like Disney Pixar. They all want you to work at Disney Pixar. So I got to learn modeling, character modeling, and that's what I really fell in love with. So when I graduated, I had a terrible portfolio because I did a bunch of storyboarding and animating and not a lot of character modeling. So it took me about 2 years to get into video games, actually, after I graduated. I wound up getting an internship at Falcon's Creative Group in Orlando, Florida, which is like, they do AR, VR theme park rides for like companies in Dubai. So I worked on like Incredible Hulk AR ride in Dubai. And then from there transitioned into merchandise, where I worked for Disney merchandise for about a 1.5 year long contract, and then a little bit afterwards for Hasbro, which also gave me Disney projects. So like toys and mugs and statues. And then from there is where I finally landed my first job as an associate character artist at Daybreak Game Company, which is actually a company here in San Diego. So yeah, I've been really, really fortunate to kind of run the gamut of like the small indie studios like Supergiant Games, 20 people, to like Amazon Games, like thousands of people working on New World. I don't think it's thousands of people. It's like hundreds of people working on New World. And I've done everything from character modeling, texturing, a little bit of rigging, a little bit of animation, lighting, VFX, like the smallest amount of VFX work. So I've been really lucky to just have a huge breadth of experience in the industry so far, which has been cool.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So to kind of follow up on that, though, for any of you, and feel free to answer any of you, do you have like a really standout project or memory that you had within working industry? If you do, like, feel free to tell us a little bit about it.
I have one, but it's like two of the questions put together. So the coolest thing, so I write stories, and the game that I work on is in the Stone Age. So a lot of information's passed on through narrative. And there's, in one little festival, there is a story, and we had a beta backer, because we were on Kickstarter, and a lot of people really liked this little tale. And he's like, wrote me saying, oh, it just made me cry. I really connected with it. I was like, oh, that's super cool. After the game released, he's like, hey, I would really appreciate it if you could give me like that story so I could take it to my therapist. What? I just wrote a story for it's a festival, and like this, someone connected with it in that way, and that was just the most freaking cool thing ever. Yeah.
I guess I have two. I have like kind of a professional one of like, we shipped Forza Motorsport in October. Somebody who you had previously been butting heads with about like how things should get done. Everybody's just like, oh, we got a date and we got to get this thing out the door. Everybody align. So it's just like a really cool feeling to like see everybody kind of start pulling in one direction because everybody's under the same deadline, and like that feeling of like, whoa, there is a cohesiveness here that I have not felt before necessarily. Like, it's just really cool, like everybody pulling in the same direction towards one goal. It's like a powerful feeling. The more personal one I would say is, for the longest time, I didn't even know that VGDC was still going on. Like, I started VGDC in college, and like, we didn't have like a great succession plan for it, and I was just like, oh, you know, it'll do what it's gonna do. So, and I kind of forgot about it for a long time, and then I think in like 2 or 3 years ago, the then president of VGDC like reached out to me and was like, hey, do you want to like come give a panel talk to a bunch of college students at this club? And I'm like, that club that I started? Oh, that's still going on? Like, and it's just so, it's so gratifying to me to see the interest, especially at UCSD, I feel like the interest in making games, in being creative, in expressing yourself, and learning all the complicated technology, the terminology, and doing all of that stuff like between midterms and finals. Like, I'm just really glad that there's still that passion here, and that y'all are living it.
Yeah, I feel like my stories aren't going to measure up to these two. Go on either side of me. But yeah, I feel like maybe two. One is I made this game with my brother where you're a chicken and you hop. It's like a mobile game. You get more hats, and there's all these wolves attacking you. And the arcade machine, which we built a long time ago for VGDC, and we put it on there. And it's still here, and the game is still on it. So when I saw that the other day, I was like, oh, it still is there. Keep going. So that was really good. I think other one was I made a multiplayer game, sort of for work. It's complicated. But it's a web game, and so you can just have everyone jump into it. It's why I love web games so much. It's so easy to just like jump in and start playing. And so getting all of my coworkers, we had like 30 people, all jumping into the same racing game. It was absolute chaos, but it was really fun to see everyone like hopping in this little thing I made and having a good time.
Yeah, so I probably have a couple as well. I'd say for like projects, I really enjoyed working on Hades because I was the only 3D artist at all for like the entirety of like 3 years of production. So every character, weapon, environment asset, prop, blah, 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 anything that was in 3D like had to pass through my hands, which was a lot of like responsibility as like a 25-year-old, but like also it was really fun to have that level of control over the work that I did. So like project-wise, I'd say that, and I really enjoyed working on Destiny 2 as well. For like moments that were really memorable, So I think the moments for me that really stick out are like people who do fan art or people who do cosplays. Like a lot of people, if they do like a Hades cosplay, they'll like tag me on Twitter or Instagram, and I'm like, oh my god, like it's so like, you know, super faithful and like looks awesome. And that started happening with Destiny 2 as well. There's this one like Korean fan artist that I don't know their name off the top of my head, but they do these really like cartoonish versions of these like horrific alien monsters that we make in Destiny 2 to like beat your buns into the ground. And so like some of my combatants just recently got revealed for the final shape, like the like purple dude with like the, you know, giant swords. And they did like a little like chibi version of it, which was basically like the Among Us dude with like just two like scythe hands. And I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Like I made it my Discord profile picture. So yeah, fan artist, if you see this streaming or on YouTube or something, I love you. You're great.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear. And so I know that we have a lot of people who are interested in pursuing that like industry and that pathway. And so jumping ahead, I just want to ask, you know, what is like your biggest piece of advice, whether it's like a certain skill you've picked up over the years or certain experiences that you like find very important that students should go after who like want to enter the industry?
I could start with this one since I've been ending questions. So for me, the number one thing that has like really helped me is tenacity. Like getting into games is very hard. It's always been really hard, and in some ways it's gotten harder. But it's a really like worthwhile industry to be a part of, and you kind of have to have a certain level of like tenacity to like, you know, go out and meet people and work on your portfolio and take, you know, feedback and criticism well, and like be able to like I graduated college being a huge introvert, so it's skills that I had to learn myself, but if I can learn them, like other people can as well. So definitely like just tenacity of the work that you do and the type of people that you meet and the communities that you build. And being able to roll with the punches a little bit, because our industry is very kind of fluctuating right now. So there's a little bit of that, but yeah, that's the number one thing that's helped out me.
I would agree with that as well, but to put something different, I would say the most valuable networking is your peers. So like you go out and like, oh, you're going to network with all these people, but it's the people that are your same level. You kind of grow up together in essence. So as you all kind of like, oh, you got a new job, you know, like you're kind of going up that ladder together. Like it's not just a one-person climb. And that just makes the journey a lot better and more possible.
Yeah, I think for me, if I would put one skill, it'd be flexibility. I think in my own path, it hasn't been always as like, you know, straightforward as I would have liked to, but I think being able to go with the flow and kind of make pivots where I needed to has helped a lot, because I think going into even like, you know, kind of more corporate programming, I think teaches you a lot of valuable skills that you can use in other parts. And, you know, being willing to like take up modeling, like 3D modeling for a project, because you didn't have an artist, that gives you new skills that you can even use going forwards. Even if you don't model, you can use all that stuff you learn to talk with a 3D modeler, or have kind of some knowledge of how to better adapt the pipeline or imports so you can handle that stuff. So yeah, I think it would be like being flexible, being able to adapt, being able to pivot.
I guess to say one that hasn't been said, I would say problem solving is a really good skill to have, no matter your discipline or what part of the industry you want to be in. And I don't just mean like being able to solve like production problems. So like making a video game is just a problem. Like it is just a problem from the moment you decide I'm going to make a video game until that game goes out the door, and then probably a little bit longer after that too. Like there's just a never-ending series of hurdles that you have to get over, and like those hurdles are what kind of make or break you as a game developer, your game, your product, and like to some extent your career. So like understanding how to take something as monumental as like, I got a game to make. I think there was a tweet that was just like, nobody told me when you get into making games that you have to make the whole thing. you do, and so you have to break that whole problem set down into smaller, more manageable pieces. And it's also just good for your career too. Like sometimes you're like, well, I've been making games for a year or two now, and I'm kind of stuck doing this thing I don't really like to do. Like, is that the direction I want to continue to go with my career? Your career is also a problem to solve. So yeah, just being able to like identify problems and then come up with solutions and pick the best one.
I think there's pivots into your career.
That's good to hear, and that's really good advice for students who are really interested in like entering the space. But kind of changing pace, I think a lot of you have been in the industry for a number of years now. And do you feel like the environment around the industry or like the times are changing within the industry? And if so, how have you just like adapted to that? Has there been any like very valuable moments you've learned in these last few years?
I guess I would say that from my perspective, I've been working professionally in games since 2012, and from my perspective, I don't know if anybody like watched Game of Thrones, but it's kind of like the summer and winter analogy to me is like you can have multi-year summers where everything is great and it's like really easy to get a job, or like it's easy to get funding for a new project or anything like that. And it seems to me like we're in kind of a video game winter right now. The pandemic, things were going up and to the right until they stopped going up and to the right, and now everybody's kind of freaking out about it because video games are only getting more expensive to create. So I think that there's going to be a little bit of a contraction to some extent. To me, on the other side of that, there's going to be, to use the seasons metaphor, a spring where like you're going to have a lot of game developers who maybe lost their job and were not able to find a new position, and so they're going to go off and start creating new things for themselves because everybody who is in games like does it because they love games. So I think to me, it's like it kind of sucks out there right now, but I am optimistic about the future. Like video games are only getting more expensive to create because the audiences are getting bigger. They have higher expectations of what a cool game is, and that to me signals continued growth.
Yeah, I'll go next. I think I definitely agree with Alex that I think it's not just video games though. I think it's like the entire tech sphere is in a bit of a winter. There's definitely been a lot of layoffs at a lot of different companies, including mine. I probably can't comment more on that. So yeah, it's definitely a bit rough out there. I think in terms of web gaming, I think it's definitely on the rise, like around the corners. There's a lot more kind of demand, and you see it popping up in a lot of different cases, which is exciting, not just as someone who's working on web games professionally, but as someone who like enjoys the idea of little games you can just pop here and there. What else? But yeah, I think there's a lot of risks and stuff, especially with AI, I feel like is the behemoth in the room too. But yeah, I guess we'll see how it goes.
I don't know. For being in the indie sphere, I guess we're kind of like the wildlings. We're like north of the wall, so it's just always winter. At least in the smaller team sizes. So like you live or die by what you make, and that's kind of scary, but also just so I'm like, oh, the layoffs and stuff. I'm like, well, we could just fail too. But like that's the realism of it. But also being aware of that, I think, is important. Knowing what you have in your hands. So what I create directly affects, like, there's no like, oh, well, I'm just gonna mail it in today. Like, then I'm mailing it in for the whole team. Like, there's just different, I don't know. It feels to me very different. But I have also never worked in the corporate world. So perhaps I have a misunderstanding. I have a fascination with them. Like, oh, water coolers. That sounds so great. But I mean, not to scare anyone away from it by any means. I think it's wonderful, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else realistically.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think everyone would agree that games are hard. Games are very especially hard right now in the industry. Like, I've been in the industry for like 8 years or so, 7 or 8 years, so not terribly long, but I also lived through being the daughter of a game developer that went through the 2008 recession. when he was laid off, from his animation job, and it took him a year to get a new job. And so I've seen firsthand the financial struggles that can come from that and the stress and the fear. But I also know that eventually it does recover, right? So I'm like on Alex's side where I'm optimistic that things will get better. It's kind of more a question of when. And so what I think really helped me with my career is like being able to fill so many different roles on so many different types of teams. Like working in merchandising before I got into video games wound up being a huge boon to me. Because, when I work at a small studio that doesn't have in-house merchandise department, I can be like, oh, I'll do like some prototyping for merchandise that we can like send out to vendors and everything. So even if you graduate and your goal is video games and the industry is just in a really bad place like it is right now, there are still places where you can find a home and you can grow a career and your skills that will eventually lead you to games. So don't give up hope just because particularly right now the industry is in a bad place. It will eventually recover.
Yeah, to add on to that also, just there was a time that I was not working directly on games, and that's when I started working at Microsoft. I found a job at Xbox working on like platform stuff, and that was what allowed me to make the connections that eventually got me back into a game studio. So like I would echo what Paige just said as being like gaming adjacent, or like being in platforms, being in a place where you work with game developers can lead to some really valuable connections that could turn into a job later.
Yeah. I'll just do an also +1 because I worked at Google and like completely not game related stuff. It was on the Gboard, the Google keyboard. If you have an Android device, you've probably used it when you type. But because of that, I was able to apply internally to positions, one of which was this gaming startup at the time that I'm now a part of.
That's really nice to hear. I do want to give us enough time for people in the audience to ask questions. So I'll ask one more question before we wrap up and we open for Q&A. This is an IGDA panel. And so if anyone wants to say a little bit of what the IGDA is, what your favorite part is, feel free to.
Karen.
All right. So IGDA is International Game Developers Association. So it's all over the world, and there's local chapters. So we have a chapter in San Diego, and there's also a sister organization, the IGDA Foundation, which is another. They are named similarly, lots of crossover, but they're completely independent organizations of each other. But all the missions relate to trying to help game developers connect and further their careers. And with the local chapters, like the main org, like their job is to make sure that we are empowered to empower those around us. And it's really up to us as the community to form what we want. So it's not just like the board, it's all of us. It's every single, like the rising tides lifts all boats. Like that is what community is. And that's what IGDA is, at least how I see it. And I'll just keep telling it, and then other people believe it, right? Like that's how it works.
Yeah. No, IGDA is great. I also go as well. IGDA, for my experience with it, at least, as a board member, but just also as a member that like attends events and everything, it's opened up a lot of opportunities for me that are either career opportunities or like career adjacent things, like doing panels like this. And like being a college professor, I never would have known that Mesa was looking for game developer professors if I hadn't met the people that I met and became friends with through going to IGDA mixers and various events. I have friends who have been in the industry for like 20, 30 years that were friends with my dad's and now friends with mine that are like, why do you do so many events? Like, how do you like even do that and like get into that? And I'm like, I don't know. I keep asking you guys to come to the freaking IGDA mixers and you say no. So like maybe you should like check it out. But yeah, so it's a great place for networking. It's a great place for meeting people in your community. It's a great place to find out about opportunities that you wouldn't elsewhere. It's just a great thing to, even if you just join the Discord, like it's a really good resource to kind of rely on.
Also just add, I feel like having just some sort of community is like really nice. So even besides the like really big like new job networking or new this networking. I feel like just having a group you can just like chat with about like what's going on in games, get feedback on your game ideas, whether it's like IGDA or something like VGDC at UCSD. I feel like it's really helpful, has been helpful for me kind of going through and trying to, it just gives you clarity on your ideas and, what's going on in the world.
Yeah, I guess I don't have much to add. I think the community aspect is really important. You can go to an IGDA mixer and just meet a bunch of other cool, really cool game developers that have cool ideas. And like, if you've ever had the experience of having a meal or a drink with somebody and you're just like talking about games and you're just like, oh, I've got this like cool idea for a game. Oh yeah, wouldn't it be cool if, and those kinds of like conversations happen a lot at the IGDA mixers. And like, you can go there for all sorts of different reasons and meet all sorts of different people. Like for every person who's like a AAA game dev or something that's there, there's also a person that's like a student or like looking to transition as a like mid-career, like adult person, like, oh, I want to get into games and I'm not really sure like the first thing how to do it. You can meet all sorts of types of people there, and it's just a really enriching, gratifying, inspiring experience, I would say, to just go and like, a lot of people say this about GDC, where you go to GDC and it's like, oh yeah, I come back and I'm so like, my brain is buzzing because I'm so inspired. Like you can get like a little bit of that every month, like without having to like fly to San Francisco and get.
I feel like you get more of that at a IGDA mixer than GDC.
I think you do get more, yeah. So I don't know, +1, recommend, do it.
And game jams.
That's your sign to go to IGDA mixers.
Fucking do it.
Yeah, well, everyone should go to it. I know some of our like student devs really enjoy going to the mixers as well. So, but I will now go ahead and open it to like a Q&A section. We're gonna have the microphone on the left side be the like Q&A, and so if you can just line up on the left side, then you will be good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
So with the recent updates to the game industry, people have been, it's been a struggle. What would you say is the new meta in trying to win this game of breaking into the industry?
Okay, my like bullshit answer is like stay in grad school and go learn ML or something, like machine learning or something. Like I am an old millennial, and so I was supposed to enter the workforce right around 2008. And due to my own laziness, I didn't do that, and I ended up entering the workforce around like 2011. 2008 was not a good time to enter the workforce. So if you have the means to like sort of delay having to do that through pursuing higher education, like you're kind of only helping yourself, I would say. Other than that, like really aggressive networking and like having whatever it is that you do, if it's art, if it's programming, if it's production, like have a lot of cool things that you can point to that set you apart to say like, hey, look, I can like come and do this job and not just be like kind of an intern type person who's just going to need a lot of hand holding and attention. Like, I can be kind of getting back to like flexibility and tenacity, like, just like say, prove to them that you can do it.
Yeah, I think I'll take a somewhat different stance. Personally, like, I feel like grad school is very valuable if you're doing a research-orientated career in computer science. So for instance, if you're doing graphics, as in like developing new ray tracing stuff, I think you really have to do, to my understanding, like if you're working on Unreal Engine on graphics, you probably want a research background. But if not, like personally, what I would recommend is I think just trying to get some experience somewhere. So if you can apply to a regular programming job, again, it's really hard for tech in general, so it's a really rough time. But if you can get a regular tech job, like, go for that, get a bit of extra cash, and then you can go into games from there. Or, personal projects, I think is a great one because you're going to learn exactly what you're doing on the job. You'll even have your own games. And they're really good, I think, games in general for like showing to recruiters. Like, it's a lot more fun. I just remember, showing like a recruiter a game and being like, here, look, you can play it. It's so much more fun than like, look at the improvement, my database enhancements. It's up 20%. Look, 2-0. Like, yeah, it's much more exciting than that, personally.
I'll just agree because like I agree with the like get it like try something adjacent, get the skill set, focus on that. Like what is it that a recruiter or like whatever your dream job is, like what is the skill set that's needed for that? And like in the indie land, like marketing is one of the things that's no like people like, oh, I'm gonna make a game and it's just gonna market itself. It doesn't. So you like try and find like what skills you don't have and then get those. Yeah, and it adjacent and keep making stuff. Just make stuff all the time.
Yeah, like I think my like entry into video games kind of applies like especially now when video game jobs are kind of more rare, I guess. Like when I worked at Disney merchandising, it taught me like ZBrush and all these other like fantastic modeling skills, but also I would go home, take a nap for a couple of hours, wake up and work on portfolio until I fell asleep. And I did that for a year. So at least with art, like it's a little bit different where your portfolio is king and is what is going to get you there. So if you don't get a job right out of college or like even a year or two out of college, just get a job that satisfies you like financially and creatively and then just work on portfolio all the time. Like eventually if you're good enough, someone will notice you and be like, hey, we should pick you up. And of course like building communities through things like IGDA and other Discord, Twitter, social media kind of things will also really, really help make those connections where like you can have like a friend that works like at Riot or like a smaller studio and they'll be like, oh, there's an opening that we didn't tell anybody about, but we're actually secretly looking for that's actually how I got my job at Disney. Someone was like, we're actually secretly looking for a digital sculptor, but we've never advertised for it ever. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like I digital sculpts, so yeah, so it's kind of like biding your time until you get that foothold. Once you're in the industry, it's much easier to stay in the industry than getting that initial job.
Thank you.
We should probably just one of us take a so we can go through more.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jordan. So I just have a general, well, not really a general question, but I have a question. Obviously, that's why I'm here. But so the panel talked a lot about like getting like a wide experience in a lot of aspects in game creation. But I tend to find that like when you're applying, you want to focus on like one thing in your application, right? So like as someone that just loves the process of making games in general, like I love writing, I love programming to a certain extent until I bang my head against something too hard, and I love designing. But is it better to like just focus on all of these like equally, or should I find like one specific part that I should just put like a large majority of my focus on so that I can craft like a resume or something like that specifically for that skill?
I'll go here, but I think
Yeah.
maybe other people weigh in on this one too. Really quick thoughts. I think the more indie you are, the more hats you need to wear, and thus the more good, the better it is for you to have a lot of hats. The more like AAA corporate you are, the more they want you to specialize. Specifically with Google, all the junior programming people, software engineers, are hired as generalists with maybe ideally a bit of specialization. The idea is that all programmers at Google ideally should be generalists and can mostly handle anything. But as you get more experience, you're more
Specialization. So I would pick one that you're more kind of centered towards and pick that as your specialization. You can still grow the other